Welcome to the Principal Podcast, where we talk about how the best professional services firms grow. Whether you're looking to scale your firm or learn from the stories of founders and leaders who've done it, you're in the right place. Join us as we interview the best leaders in professional services. Let's get on with the show. Dr. Derrick, welcome to the Principal Podcast. Happy to
Thanks
have
for
you.
having. Yeah, it's good to be here.
It is my pleasure.
Mhm.
Let's jump straight into it, Derrick. What's the story? What got you into consulting and brand strategy?
Yeah, so it's kind of the arc of my story kind of starts out actually in broadcasting. That's where I thought I would spend my career, and during that time, I saw myself as a communicator. Um, sharing and just penetrating culture through radio and television. But then I moved into the ad agency world, and I saw myself as a marketer. And just like many other marketers, you're helping to solve different problems and helping folks make decisions through brand. And then I moved into consulting, where now I see myself as a connector of not just dots but ideas and people. And that's really where I found my home, working on consequential problems. And I've been doing this in my own firm since 2003. And it's been exciting every day because it's always something new. Um, that's my long answer to that.
We are on a long format.
Mhm.
This is where I want long answers. It's funny because I have a certain, yeah, I should call it respect for longevity, because it proves one thing to me, is that you know how to last in business, right? And how to make something, if not compound, at least resist, time fluctuations. God knows that over the last 23 years, some stuff happened in the world that might have shaken some of the industries that you work with. So super exciting for this one. What's the problem that you solve now, Derrick? Like, what is it that you help people achieve exactly?
Yeah. Well, there are lots of problems. There are lots of ways to go out of business, right? So, um, you know, if I have to pinpoint it, it's really helping uh, our clients resonate and connect, and actually um, take a moment to slow down and think about what the problem is ahead of us. Um, once you do that, you can walk around the problem and look for an access point into the solution. So, not to be too general here, but I find that clients come to us because they have growth problems. They come to us because they have alignment problems with the leadership team. They come to us because the culture doesn't understand, what it's there to do. There's no guiding North Star. So there's lots of different ways, but I'll sum it up this way. Um, we really believe in inside out. So when I worked in the advertising agency world, my last employer way back when was Saatchi and Saatchi, and there I was in the leadership team, and I was also on the new business development team. So pitching new business, as you can imagine. And back then, we saw ourselves um, as not really, I would say, not really solving problems, but more like listening to a problem and making it fit the offering that we're offering. For instance, Saatchi and Saatchi makes its money primarily from television. So if you have a problem, a TV spot would be the thing to fix it, which I learned was not ideal for clients. And so when I started my own consultancy, I made sure that we would be focused on the true problems, and we would um, um, we would really get to understand them and solve them that way. And so that brings me to your core question, which jogged my memory, Gilliam.
What's the problem that you solve today?
Yeah, the problem that I solved today. So that brings it around to the myriad of problems that businesses can face. And usually today, right now, it's growth, and it's also future forward. What are we going to become in this new age of AI, and how's that going to affect our business? I was speaking with a prospective client on Friday, and you get different shades of this. You get folks that are at leading brands that or leaders in their category that are very I want to say complacent. And complacency is something that I think is the biggest problem of all. And that's where uh, we try to help our clients move from that position to be more proactive and forward thinking. And that's really the kind of partner I think that clients need today. Not just people that are going to say yes, but people that have the courage to say no. And most successful businesses today are built on the word no, because no helps you stay focused. And that is very much at the core of what we do and how we help our clients. But I do want to answer that a little bit further, because that can be very vague, and I understand not everybody is in my space. So we're a brand consultancy. And so our work focuses on brand research, brand strategy, brand culture. Some of the usual suspects in there would be, brand architecture. We also get into um, brand growth strategies such as licensing. We also are experts at coming in and helping organizations be better stewards of their brand through training programs. And then we'll take it a step further when asked, and that's where more tactics would come in, like um, brand identity and brand guidelines, those kinds of things. But for many years, we were white labeled from ad agencies that we did the behind the scenes strategy work for them. And there was a belief there that if we also offered a lot of creative stuff, we would look like them, and that would be a conflict. So we kept our creative services kind of below the line. But now we're much more, I would say, we're waving our arms about those offerings much more than in the past.
So I'm thinking about the problem that you solve, and I'm immediately thinking that's probably a problem that 99.9% of the companies out there are facing. But so for you, Dr. Derrick, who do you focus on? Like, who is it that you typically work with?
Yeah, it's the decision makers, without a doubt. It's the people that are being kept up at night. Now that's usually the leadership team, CEO, CFO, CMO. Those are the folks that usually call me. Those are the folks that understand that they've got to lead their organization forward. Um, Now, our focus in recent years has been mid-market firms. And we've worked with a lot of firms that are trying to get to that $1 billion mark, and they've gotten stuck somewhere in there. They're not getting the traction. But the origins of this business have been working with well over 250 brands in all stages of development. So we've worked with a lot of global brands, national brands, and startups, and that's still part of our DNA. We're still working with um, those organizations, even smaller organizations. But the shift to the mid market is where we believe business needs the most help. If you're at a national or global brand today, chances are, especially in the terms of AI, you have the funds to work with, McKinsey or some big consulting firms, and you're probably engaging those firms. But in the mid market, it's a different story. The problems are pretty much the same, but the budgets aren't. And there is, I think, much more pressure and much more probability that you're going to be left behind. So we shifted our focus to the mid market, and that's where we've been spending a lot of time. Although we're also helping some um, smaller firms compete as well. I think one of the strengths, and this is probably an upcoming question, but one of the strengths of the Blake Project is that we haven't specialized in a certain industry or a certain size of company, and that has exposed us to all different types of industries and all different types of businesses, which I think gives us a much deeper and richer perspective on what businesses need to survive. And we've had to apply those same tools to our own business. You don't get to last in this business this long without figuring a few things out. So we've actually lived some of the problems that our clients are facing.
So I like that answer, but I feel you're a bit too humble, Derrick. I mean, you've worked with the Utah Jazz. Not going to talk about their performance this season. One of our best clients and very good friend is actually a huge fan of the Jazz. The Statue of the Liberty. Um, I mean, Sochi 2014, EA Sports,
Mhm.
ING, which is a big bank in the Netherlands and like Western Europe, for those who don't know. And those are big boys out there. What has worked for you to get through the door? Because I'm thinking about those companies and I'm like, yeah, if you need to talk to the C-suites of those people of those companies, good luck. Like everybody wants a piece of them. Their calendar is pretty filled out. So what has worked for you, Derrick, to get the attention of those people? I'm not talking about closing deals just yet, but really getting the attention of, management of the Jazz, Statue of Liberty, sorry, ING. What has worked for you marketing wise in terms of branding, wink, wink, and lead gen?
Yeah, I'm going to draw. You're absolutely right. It's very, very hard to have those conversations. It's very hard to, once you have them, even compete. You're competing against all the other folks that have managed to get a conversation. So I'm going to draw a line back to the origins of the Blake Project. So in the early years, in 2006, 3 years after I launched the Blake Project with some partners, we we tried something which was relatively new at the time, and that was blogs. So we launched Branding Strategy Insider, which is 20 years old this month. Um, and in the early days of blogging, especially when you're in a professional services business and you're a knowledge worker and you're openly and freely sharing knowledge, the question that I would get is, what's the ROI? You're giving away what you're selling, is in a sense. And the question directly was, how much? How much are you making from this? And my answer was always, well, first there's the mental profit. It's what you learn by understanding what you know and reading other blogs and those kinds of things. And also talking about common problems in brand, and then researching how to solve those, and then living how to solve those, and sharing that on the blog. Now, over time, the momentum grew, where we had 5,000 subscribers, and then 10,000, and now there's over 60,000 subscribers. So I'm answering your question this way: it is trying something new. It is behaving like a startup and saying, "Hey, we're not going to be afraid to get out there." And that's what we did with Branding Strategy Insider, and that turned into a new business development engine. So essentially, we would talk about the common problems and their solutions. Most people know you can't solve those by just reading a blog post. There has to be some action, and that action was people calling us. And that's really where the momentum grew in the business. The other side of this, though, which I credit much more to some of the client brands you mentioned, is referrals. Referrals. People come to us because they've heard about us now, especially at this point. But in those early days when I didn't have a lot of traction, um, I had to turn into my network and see who would help me. And thankfully, my first client was Bausch and Lomb, which is for those of you who don't know, is a big eye care company, mainly contact lenses. And that client followed me from Saatchi and Saatchi, and I had I had some doubts here because I was like, okay, Saatchi and Saatchi, 8,000 employees at the time. For me and some partners, is two or three of us. And I was skeptical that I could, appeal to even a client I had a good relationship. But they made the jump with me, and that proved to me that it always comes back to the people. It always comes back to relationships, and that's the key: relationships. Um, and one other thing I want to just say here, maybe to remind the audience. And I had a client tell me this a few weeks back because often often consultants care more about the client work than the client does. That sounds counterintuitive. That sounds crazy. But when you're inside an organization, um, you're in the fog of war, and it's you're easily distracted, and you may not have the stake in the business that a consultant does. I mean, the pressure is on. You come in, you're expected to do some things and make things happen. And I've seen many times when, I hate to say it, but I've seen clients, you know, not care as much about the work at hand, and it's been shocking. So, and then, in talking with a client recently, they said the same thing. They said, yes, that happens. Um, it's we need consultants, is what he told me. We need consultants to come in here and help us stay focused on what's important, and remind us that the stakes are high, and remind us that if we don't, either expand an advantage or create one, we're not going to be here anymore. So that's it comes back to the people, and it comes back to how they're connecting with you. And for us, Branding Strategy Insider and referrals have been the pathway, in very, very effective pathways. Um, so yeah, there's a little bit of the secret right there.
If we continue on the secret, then Derek, what's so 2026, right? Is the year we are recording this episode. What do you see as the best way, or some of the best ways, to build those relationships in 2026? In the age of AI, as you just mentioned, brand is going to be important. People talking about you positively is going to be important. This is where referrals come from. But how do you build those relationships that are so important?
Yeah, this is a concept that was even around, I would say, in the early days of my consultancy, and that idea was high tech, high touch, and it came down to this: the more technology separates us, the more value is placed on when we're together as humans. And so when we actually have human contact, not a screen, I mean, like in real life, in person. So I think you have to go to the conferences. You have to go to You have to go where your prospective customers are, not just where you want them to be. You have to also be prepared to put the time in. So look, every day we all get in our inboxes these AI generated emails that are just being blasted out. Um, and we shake our heads and we just move it to spam because it's not a method to connect. The problem is here, people don't want to put the time in, and psychologists will tell you it takes 100 hours to make a friend. Well, most people don't even want to put a minute in to the relationship. They just want to get into the client and just start billing. It doesn't work that way. So when you do get in there, um, you better really care, and it needs to be authentic. Um, and I just wanted to caution people that of all the advances that will happen with AI and all those good things that it will bring, it will not there will not be an automation of relationships. There will not be an automation of relationships. So get your people skills down, and that is the secret, because the better you are at that, the better you're going to be at making a meaningful connection with someone, and the more often um, they'll come back to you and say, "Hey, you you're the right person to do this for me, or you're the right firm to do this for me," because that's also is a culture thing. It's not just I'm talking a company culture thing. You have to build that into your consultancy. Everyone has to share that mindset that we are not um, we are not meeting someone to get a check. We're meeting someone to build a relationship. And back again to those clients you mentioned, all of those people had that in common. They needed someone that they could really count on, and someone that was willing um, to go further than just make something transactional. If you have the transaction mindset, which is a lot of people, um, and then they wonder why they're not getting the traction, um, it's because of that. They're they have somehow stripped out the human side of their business, which in the brand consulting space, that is what we focus on, right? That's the connective tissue. And brand, the way that I look at it, it's the bridge between the mental and the physical. And that's where you can have that relationship and have that opportunity to grow with the client.
So I like this. And the follow-up question I always have to this kind of approach, Derrick, is how do you transform this into actual business? What's the actual process, and for you specifically, to move from those relationship buildings, which are key and important, to a sales conversation, a closing conversation, an SOW, a letter of engagement with rock and roll? What does sales motion look like for you with that context around relationship building?
Yeah. So let me answer that this way. So first, we've got to be kind of real here. We're B2B. So that's all about B2B sales is all about mitigating risk. And understand that there are multiple decision makers often, and they need a lot of different evidence that you can help them. It's not, consulting is not an impulse buy, as we very well know. So going into that with that mindset, we want to bring all the credibility we have. We want to pull every lever we have that shows that we're the right partner. And part of that is, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, is slowing things down and saying, hey, wait. What is the problem? Understand the problem. when you understand the problem, then and only then should you get into, well, how can I solve the problem? And sometimes, if you really care, you'll see that you can't solve the problem, and then you help them find somebody that can. That's also very key. But so for us, that process, slow it down, think it through, because they've come to you as a thinking partner. They're looking for that. They're looking for that help, and mutually come together to analyze what they see is holding them back. And sometimes you find out that that's not the thing. They don't see it the same way that you would see it. But then we go through a process with, there are several models and tools that we would use depending on the problem. But I like to just generalize and look through this lens of every problem is an education problem. People don't buy what they don't understand. That understanding is the bridge that people cross to, including my business. Once you're crossing that bridge, then you have a new client. And, so think about that. What is missing? What is missing in the equation that what is missing for this client, that if it were true, and if that blank was filled in, it would solve the problem. So I would say you've got to go in with the problem-solving mindset, which won't be earth-shattering for the audience here. But another part of this is understanding that in an organization, senior leadership teams have to be on the same page, and that isn't always the case. And so we have typically started our work with a workshop to really get all the opinions heard and get the understandings of everyone documented to see where people stand on what they think is going wrong. I think a big mistake consultants make is the assumption that it's this instead of this. And they jump to those things before really talking with the client and understanding, because there's many layers to these things. There could be some issues behind the scenes that you don't know. The most underrated work that we do is stakeholder interviews, because that's where you get into what I call possession of the truth. What's really going on? You can't solve problems without really knowing the truth, and what's behind the problem, and sometimes who is behind the problem. You've got to know that, and so that's that kind of the beginning of our process. And of course, there could be other steps like research and those kinds of things that are involved. But no problems can be solved by any consultant by doing a great deal of guessing. Take that out of the equation. As far as consultants and experts, you have to be an educator in this business. You have to help people understand, why things aren't working the way they think they're not working. You have to have them do that. And I'm a big advocate for spending the time, taking the time. You've got to take the time to really think through the problem with your client or your prospective client.
Amen to that. What's the I guess the $1,000,000 question, Derrick, as you've just closed on your 250th client, what's your number one challenge? What is the one nut that you're trying to crack that, once you crack, you're going to take the whole thing to the next level? What would that be for you?
I think for us is to keep looking forward. Don't be distracted by the past. I understand that we've come a long ways, and there's some things to celebrate there. Uh, take that moment and say, yes, great, things worked. But you got to keep looking ahead. Uh, Anyone who owns any type of business knows it's you eat what you kill. This is you always have to think about planting seeds today, for a harvest tomorrow, every single day. And part of my business is certainly driven by reputation, but another part of it is just having a sales mindset and not just sitting back and saying, oh, it's just going to come to me. Nothing ever came to me. Nothing ever came to me. It may have felt that way over time, with some repeat business, things like that. But it was all earned at some point. It was all earned at some point. And you need to, also, I would just say another thing. A lot of people give up too soon on their ideas. And what our world usually ends up with is whoever stayed with it the longest, which wasn't always the best idea, as those people in the beginning. But I think I've also managed my consultancy with a little bit of a tenacity that, hey, we're going to make something happen, and we're going to create value, and in a way that makes us really valuable. And when you think through that lens, I think you create more opportunities for yourself.
Dr. Derrick Daye, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Derrick, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
Yes, please check out theblakeproject.com, THEBLAKE project.com. And you can also subscribe to brandingstrategyinsider.com. And I'm also found on LinkedIn, but would love to connect.
We will put all the links in the description. I can say one thing for sure, Dr. Derrick, is that you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn out of this interview. Me, I've just added you. Thank you so much for coming on the Principal Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Principal Podcast. We hope you've learned valuable lessons and strategies to grow your firm and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.